You never think you'll catch something like this in real time. Most people hear about it after the fact. Text discovered, a friend accidentally letting something slip, a hotel charge on the wrong credit card. But for me, it all started with 2 wine glasses and a scarf. It was early November in Portland, Maine. The air had that sharp, sea-salted chill, and the sky hung low with the kind of gray that made the whole day feel sluggish. I left work 2 hours early, no warning, no plan. I just hit a wall around 3:15, shut my laptop, and walked out. The drive home was uneventful. I remember thinking I'd beat traffic, maybe grab a quick beer before Linda got back from her usual late afternoon errands. I wasn't suspicious then. Tired maybe. Drained from another client call where no one listened and everyone had too many opinions. I pulled into the driveway, expecting nothing more than silence and the hum of the fridge. But the second I stepped inside, the air changed. First, the smell, something floral but unfamiliar. Not Linda's usual lavender diffuser or the citrus candles she kept stacked under the sink. No, this was different. It had a deeper note to it, something I couldn't place right away, but I noticed it. Then I saw the wine. 2 glasses on the kitchen table. One nearly empty, the other still halfway full. No lipstick smudge, no coaster underneath either. Just sitting there like a quiet confession. What really got me was the temperature. When I picked up the fuller glass, it was still warm. Someone had been here. Recently. That alone might not have meant much. Linda occasionally had friends over, though it was rare. But this next part, this was what made my stomach twist. A scarf. A man's scarf. It was navy with a subtle gray pattern. Soft wool. The kind you buy for style more than warmth. Draped lazily over the back of one of the dining chairs. I'd never seen it before. I would have remembered it wasn't generic. I stared at it for maybe a full minute, half expecting it to explain itself. I didn't touch it. I just walked past, trying to keep my thoughts grounded in reality. Maybe her brother stopped by. Maybe someone from her volunteer work needed to talk. But if that were the case, why leave a scarf? Why 2 glasses? The bedroom was worse. The bed was unmade. Linda's side in particular looked disturbed, not in the usual I got up late way. The pillows were misshapen, the top sheet pushed back halfway, like someone had gotten up quickly, maybe after hearing a car in the driveway. I stood there staring at it, the silence in the house pressing against my eardrums. That's when I heard the back door. Linda walked in with a paper grocery bag in her arms, keys jangling in one hand. She looked calm, not surprised. Calm in a way that now, in hindsight, felt calculated. She glanced up and saw me standing near the hallway. "Hey, babe," she said, brushing her hair back with the inside of her wrist. "You're home early." No question, no nervous energy. Just a smile and a greeting, like nothing in the house was out of place. "Yeah," I said slowly, still standing in the same spot. Figured I'd sneak out early for once. She set the grocery bag on the counter and started unpacking bananas, kale, oat milk. Her usual health food stuff. I didn't say anything at first. Just stood there and watched her hands move. Smooth, practiced, like she had done this exact routine 100 times. She turned and noticed me still standing there. Her eyes followed my gaze to the table. "Oh," she said with a little laugh. "Don't get excited. I didn't start drinking without you. Just sampling a new cab I picked up from that shop downtown." I walked over and picked up the scarf. "And this?" I asked, holding it up with 2 fingers. She paused for half a second, just long enough for someone who didn't expect a pop quiz. Then she smiled, like it finally clicked. "That's Sam's. He dropped off the packet for the PDA fundraiser thing. He was running late for another meeting and must have left it behind." Sam. A guy from the school board. Friendly enough, but not exactly scarf-leaving clothes. Also, Sam was allergic to red wine. He told us that at last year's Christmas party. I said none of this out loud. I just nodded slowly and set the scarf back down on the chair. "You really have been burning the candle at both ends," she said next, her voice softening. "You okay? You've been coming home later and later. It's like we're just crossing paths these days." And there it was, the pivot. She moved effortlessly from explanation to concern. From "nothing's wrong" to "we're the problem." It was subtle but effective. She started talking about my hours, about how distant we'd both felt lately, how we should plan a getaway soon, some time to reconnect. Her tone was light, but her eyes stayed locked on mine the whole time, searching. I didn't argue. I didn't press her. I just nodded along, let her steer the conversation, let her win the round. Later, we cooked dinner together, shrimp tacos and some canned margaritas she'd picked up. She played music, danced a little like she always did when she wanted to lighten the mood. We even laughed once or twice. But I wasn't really there. I was cataloging, rewinding, noticing, because it wasn't just the wine, the scarf, or the bed. It was how quickly she deflected, how practiced it all seemed, how her phone, which she always left plugged in on the counter, now sat face down in the corner the entire evening, how she kept glancing at it, but never touched it, how she changed the subject the moment I leaned toward asking about her day. Before that day, I would have chalked all this up to stress. A fluke. Something normal couples go through. But the thing about catching someone off guard is that it tells you everything you weren't supposed to see. So I smiled. I cleaned the dishes. I made a joke about our anniversary coming up and how we were overdue for a trip to the White Mountains. She played along, nodding, even suggesting a new Airbnb she'd seen online. She was animated more than usual, actually. Too much. That night, we lay in bed with our backs to each other. She fell asleep quickly, or at least pretended to. I stared at the ceiling, the image of that scarf hanging behind my eyelids like a ghost. Every little detail from the past few months started playing back in my head like a movie I hadn't realized I was starring in. I didn't know exactly what was going on. Not yet, but I knew what it felt like to be lied to, and I knew this was just the beginning. That night, after Linda fell asleep, or pretended to, I lay on my back staring at the shadows cast by the street lamp outside. It was the kind of silence that makes everything louder. The hum of the fridge downstairs, the ticking of the hallway thermostat, the shallow rhythm of her breathing. And my thoughts, relentless and fast, like a reel I couldn't shut off. I kept seeing that scarf, the wine glass, the perfectly rumpled bedsheet. I tried to talk myself down. Tried to be the rational version of myself. The guy who didn't jump to conclusions. The guy who respected boundaries and gave the benefit of the doubt. But my gut, it was having none of it. And as I stared up into the nothing, a string of smaller moments, the kind you brush off in real time, started replaying in sharper detail. Linda had taken up running about 4 months ago. First, I was happy for her. She'd always talked about wanting to take her mornings back, and jogging through the neighborhood seemed like a healthy step. But the runs got longer, more frequent, and something about them began to feel off. She'd head out around 6 a.m. Long before I was out of bed, dressed in designer athleisure gear she didn't own before, her hair pulled back but still styled, her face lightly made up, eyeliner, lip tint, even a spritz of that same expensive perfume I smelled on the wine glasses earlier that day. I remember thinking, who wears fragrance for cardio? She always came back glowing. Not just sweaty, post-run flushed. Glowing. Energized. Like someone who just got off a roller coaster or out of a hotel room with the shades drawn. And then there were the grocery trips. God, the grocery trips. Linda used to hate errands. She'd send me out for just about everything, even toothpaste or cereal. But lately, she volunteered. Almost insisted on going herself. Started once a week, then twice, then more. I'd hand her a short list, for maybe 5 items, and she'd disappear for 2 hours. Sometimes more. Always coming back with things that didn't quite match what we needed. Almond flour instead of regular. Coconut yogurt no one liked. Bags full of extras that she claimed were on sale. One time, she came back with a bottle of wine from a vineyard in Sonoma I'd never heard of and said it was a recommendation from the store clerk. Except I'd been to that store. There was no wine section. That should have set off alarms. Didn't. Not then. But now, it was like watching puzzle pieces fall into place. The kind of clarity that only comes after you stop trying to explain things away. Her phone habits changed, too. That was more recent. Linda was never attached to her phone. She actually used to mock people who couldn't have a meal without scrolling. But over the past couple months, she became one of them. Subtle but noticeable. Her screen was always face down. Always locked. New passcode. She used to let me Google things on it without a second thought. Now, if I even glanced at it, she'd tilt the screen or flip it over. Once, I walked past her car in the driveway and heard her talking. Voice hushed, animated. She was parked, just sitting there, phone pressed to her ear. I knocked on the driver's window just as a reflex. She jumped, actually startled, then fumbled to end the call. When I asked who it was, she laughed. Said it was her sister. That she didn't want to bring family drama inside the house. Only later did I remember her sister was out of the country that week. There were gifts too. Small ones, but strange. A bracelet in a little velvet pouch, clearly not from any store we knew. A silk scarf that didn't match anything in her closet. When I asked about them, she'd shrug, say she got them on sale. Or that it was a gift from one of the other moms on the school committee. And the perfume. God, that perfume. She started wearing something new. Not often. Just on her run days or when she claimed she was meeting friends. But the scent lingered on her coat, in the bathroom, in the laundry. It was bold, spicy, floral, unfamiliar. The kind of thing you wear when you want to be remembered. I caught a whiff of it again as I rolled over in bed that night. Her back to me, her breathing steady and even. That's when I realized I didn't know what was real anymore. Was this all just in my head? Was I manufacturing a story out of scraps, driven by paranoia and stress? Or was I finally seeing what had been in front of me all along? I didn't sleep. My mind wouldn't let me. By the time the sun rose, pale light leaking through the window, I had mentally compiled a list. Every odd moment, every time her story didn't quite line up, every little instinct I had ignored. And I hated how long the list was. I got up quietly, trying not to wake her. Downstairs, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the same spot where the wine glasses had been the day before. They were gone now, washed and put away. The scarf too. No trace left. As if nothing had happened. Linda came down about an hour later, stretching and smiling like it was any other morning. "Coffee?" she asked, already reaching for the French press. "Sure," I replied. I watched her move around the kitchen in her usual robe and slippers. Hair slightly tousled, face bare. She looked like the same woman I married. But something in me knew that wasn't the full story anymore. As we sat together sipping coffee, talking about nothing in particular, weather, a news story, what to make for dinner, I kept wondering, how much of this was real? Was she lying to me while pouring cream into my mug? Was she already planning her next excuse? I didn't ask. Not yet. But I decided then and there, I wasn't going to keep pretending. By midweek, I stopped doubting myself. Suspicion had taken root so deeply that no part of my day escaped it. Every look Linda gave me felt filtered. Every word she said rehearsed. I began moving through the house like a stranger, watching, listening, observing patterns that no longer made sense unless I assumed the worst. She didn't know I had access to our cloud backup. It wasn't even intentional. Years ago, we synced her phone to the family tablet, one of those automatic logins neither of us bothered to change. It mostly updated photos of the kids, shared reminders, the occasional grocery list. But I hadn't looked at it in months. That changed on a Friday afternoon, 2 days before our wedding anniversary. I was in the kitchen trying to find a recipe for dinner. I opened the tablet to check an old note from Linda, and that's when I saw it. An unfamiliar file loading under our shared cloud folder. The progress bar moved slowly, labeled simply, VID_1139, MOV. Curious, I tapped it. The thumbnail alone made my stomach drop. There she was, Linda, wearing an emerald green dress I'd never seen before, standing under string lights beside a pool. The dress clung to her hips like it had been tailored for the occasion. Her makeup was heavier than usual. Her hair done up in a way she hadn't bothered with for me in years. She was laughing. Not politely, not nervously. She was radiant, alive in a way I hadn't seen in ages. And then the frame panned. 2 men flanked her, both in open-collared shirts and polished shoes, drinks in hand. They leaned in close, whispering in her ears, and she touched one of their arms. Mate, comfortable, familiar. She wasn't being courted. She was participating. Deliberately, one of them reached out and brushed her lower back. She didn't flinch. In fact, she leaned into him. The video played for a full 2 minutes. It wasn't shaky or accidental. Someone had taken the time to film it, steadily, capturing her from different angles. It wasn't surveillance, it was a highlight reel. As I watched it, my hands went cold. My throat tightened. I had been expecting confirmation of a secret rendezvous. Maybe a kiss in a parked car, a message, a gift. But this wasn't clandestine. This was a party, a lifestyle, and she had filmed it. She knew the camera was there. She looked right at it near the end, winked, laughed, raised her glass. This wasn't something happening to her. This was something she had chosen. I exited the video and checked the file info. Timestamp, 11:17 p.m. The night she told me she was meeting just the girls for dinner at the marina. She'd come home around 2 a.m., claiming they lost track of time. She smelled like pool chlorine and citrus body spray. I hadn't questioned it then. Now I wanted to scream. There were other files. *TS of an invitation sent to her private email. One I didn't even know she had. It was for a connection event, held at a private estate about 30 minutes outside Portland. The invitation featured vague phrases like selective pairing, consensual boundaries, and discretion expected. It was password protected and RSVP only. Her name was on the guest list. There was even a confirmation email. She'd checked the interested in couples and open conversation box. My jaw clenched so hard I felt my molars grind. I backed out of the folder, hands shaking, and placed the tablet on the counter like it was a live wire. I stood in the kitchen, breathing hard, feeling like I was going to throw up or punch a hole through the drywall. She didn't just cheat. She planned it. She dressed for it, RSVP'd for it, drove out to it. She filmed herself enjoying it. And all the while, she came home and kissed me goodnight like we were still living in the same world. That night, she left again. This time to celebrate a coworker's birthday. She wore the same perfume. Different dress, but same low neckline, same extra coat of mascara. I watched her walk out the door, heard the car pull out of the driveway, and didn't say a word. 10 minutes later, another file began uploading to the tablet. It auto-synced to the cloud, and this time I didn't hesitate. I opened it the moment it finished. The footage was darker, less clear, but the setting was the same. Twinkling lights, pool in the background, people lounging on chaise chairs with drinks and lowered inhibitions. There were couples, trios, strangers tangled in familiar ways. And in the center of it all, Linda. Same emerald dress, same wide smile, same man from before, now seated beside her with his hand on her thigh. They looked like a couple. No, they looked like soulmates, like two people who had been waiting for the world to fall away so they could exist freely. At one point, she whispered something in his ear, and he laughed, kissed her cheek, then her neck. Her eyes fluttered closed. She didn't pull away. That's when the camera zoomed out. She wasn't alone. There were other men watching. One stepped forward, and Linda stood, taking both his hands in hers. Another woman appeared, laughing with them. The energy was unmistakable, sensual, deliberate, mate. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a drunken mistake or a flirtation gone too far. This was a different life, a life I had never been invited into. I closed the tablet and sat in the dark. No TV, no music, no distractions. Just me and the silence of a house I no longer recognized. The refrigerator hummed again, like a funeral dirge. My throat was dry, and my palms felt damp. I stared at the hardwood floor, the faint scratches we'd made while moving furniture, the edge of the rug we picked out together. It all felt like a stage set, like none of it was real anymore. For a long time, I didn't cry. I didn't even move. I just sat there, the tablet still glowing on the counter behind me. Then the first tear slid down my cheek. Caught me off guard, like my body had decided on its own that it was time. Not just because she had cheated. Not even because it was so deliberate. But because she had been living this other life. Fully, vibrantly, joyfully, and never once looked back. Not even in the footage. Not even in a moment of hesitation. She never looked guilty. She looked free. And I realized I had become the lie, the cover, the placeholder for the version of herself she'd outgrown. When she got home that night, hours later, I was already in bed, lights off, back turned. I felt her slip quietly under the covers, heard the rustle of her dress being replaced by sleepwear, felt the mattress dip with her weight. She whispered, "Good night." I didn't answer. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But I was done pretending. The morning after the second video, I woke up before the sun. Not because of an alarm, just because my body couldn't rest anymore. My mind was on autopilot. I swung my legs out of bed, careful not to wake her, and walked barefoot down the stairs. The hardwood was cold beneath my feet. The silence in the house felt like it was waiting for something, like a held breath before the storm. Coffee. That was the first thing I did. Same as every morning, though everything about me had changed overnight. I stood by the counter, watching the machine drip into the carafe, steam curling upward. I didn't feel anger yet, just finality, a quiet, full-bodied resignation that hit harder than rage ever could. This wasn't about confronting her. Not anymore. The time for conversations had passed. The truth had already spoken for her, in full color, high definition, from multiple angles. What was left to say? I wasn't interested in her excuses, her explanations, her suddenly urgent desire to reconnect or talk things through. No, she had made her choices. Now it was my turn. I drank my coffee in silence, watching the sky outside turn from deep blue to soft gray. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just planned. By 7 a.m., I was at the closet, pulling down suitcases, stacking cardboard boxes from the attic. I worked with a calm I didn't know I had. Folded her clothes with more care than she deserved. Labeled things. Left her jewelry untouched. Boxed her perfumes, her shoes, her books. Took hours. Hours to disassemble a life we spent years building. But it needed to be done. Each item I touched felt less like hers and more like something being removed from a crime scene. Gloves off, no sentiment. Just cleanup. I set the boxes by the front door. Then I called the bank. We had a joint checking and a shared credit card. Both were frozen by lunchtime. I transferred my direct deposit into a private account I'd opened that morning. I took my name off her car's insurance. I changed my Netflix password. Cold, small things, but each one felt like a stitch closing a wound. Then came the locks. I called a locksmith and had the house rekeyed before she even had a chance to realize what was happening. Same door, new key. When I held it in my palm, I felt something shift. It wasn't relief yet, but it was the start of control coming back. By mid-afternoon, I'd emailed a lawyer. Not one of those billboard attorneys who promise revenge. Someone quiet, methodical, recommended by a friend who'd been through something similar. I didn't want fireworks. I wanted clarity. At 4 p.m., I sat the kids down. That was the part that almost broke me. Our two, Brady, 14, and Molly, 11, were in the living room, eyes flicking back and forth between my face and the sealed boxes by the door. I'd practiced what to say, rehearsed it in my head a dozen times, but when it came time to speak, I froze for half a second. Then I said the words as gently and firmly as I could. Your mom and I won't be living together anymore. Brady's jaw tensed. Molly blinked fast. They asked if we were getting divorced. I nodded. They asked why. I paused. I could have said something generic. We've grown apart. We don't see eye to eye. Sometimes, love changes. But I didn't. I looked them both in the eyes and said, because she broke our family's trust in a way I can't accept. It's not your fault. It's not about you. But it's not something we can fix. Neither of them asked for details. But they knew. Kids always know more than we give them credit for. Molly started crying. Brady went quiet. And I just sat there between them, trying to hold their pain while wrestling with my own. By the time Linda walked through the door, carrying a bottle of wine and a smile, she looked like someone returning to a peaceful, ordinary life. Then she saw the boxes. She blinked, paused. What's going on? I didn't move from where I stood. I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice. You're leaving, I said. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? You're leaving this house. Tonight. Your things are packed. The locks have been changed. I've already spoken to a lawyer. And the kids know. She set the wine down like her hands had gone numb. Mark, what are you talking about? What is this? I tilted my head. You know exactly what it is. She stepped forward, her voice dropping into that soft, careful register she used when she wanted to disarm a situation. Okay, I don't know what you think you saw or heard, but, Linda, I interrupted. Don't. There's nothing left to explain. I saw everything. Her lips parted, then pressed together again. I could see her mind racing, scanning for the right defense, the right tone, but there wasn't one. Can we please go upstairs and talk about this? She asked. No, we're done talking. She looked at the kids, then back at me. You told them? Yes. You told them I cheated? I told them you broke this family's trust. And you did. Her eyes filled with tears. And maybe once upon a time that would have moved me. Maybe I would have softened, sat down beside her, tried to understand the deeper why. But not this time, because betrayal like this, it doesn't happen in a moment. It happens through 1,000 choices made when the other person's back is turned. I want to explain, she said, voice cracking. You owe me that. No, I replied calmly. You owed me honesty. You owed me fidelity. You owed me the decency not to turn our marriage into a stage prop while you went off chasing whatever this is. You don't get to cry now and act like this happened to you. She looked down. Her shoulders sagged. I waited, gave her a beat to respond. She didn't. Take your things, I said, nodding toward the door. I'll send the rest after the lawyer finalizes the agreement. And for the first time in the 15 years I had known her, Linda didn't argue. She just nodded, picked up her coat, took 2 boxes, walked out, and I closed the door behind her. No slamming, no dramatics, just a click. The quiet after a storm. She was gone. The door shut with a soft click that sounded like finality, but it didn't echo the way I expected it to. No thunder, no dramatic collapse of the world around me. Just silence. A thick, heavy, unforgiving kind of silence that filled the house in her absence. I stood in the foyer for a while, not moving. The kids were upstairs, and the house felt hollow. Not just empty of her presence, but stripped of the invisible scaffolding I'd come to rely on, routines, habits, the quiet rhythm of shared life. All of it was gone, and yet the world hadn't stopped spinning. I half expected to feel relief. I didn't. Not yet. The first night alone was brutal. Not because I missed her, at least not the real her, but because it all still felt surreal. Like I'd stepped into someone else's life. The house was the same, but the air had changed. Every room carried echoes of her. The mug in the sink, the book she left half-read on the coffee table, the faint imprint of her perfume in the guest bathroom. Ghosts, every one of them. The next morning, I opened the windows and let the cold air in, stripped the sheets off our bed, vacuumed, scrubbed the kitchen counters. I wasn't cleaning for hygiene. I was cleansing, trying to reset the house to make it mine again. For 2 days there was nothing, just quiet. Then on the 3rd day she showed up. It was mid-morning, and I was working in the dining room when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I stood up instinctively, looked through the blinds. Linda. She stepped out of her car slowly, like she wasn't sure if she belonged here anymore. She wasn't dressed for battle, no dramatic makeup, no performance-ready outfit. She wore jeans and an old sweatshirt, her hair pulled back. She looked ordinary, worn down, maybe even scared. I didn't open the door. She knocked once, then again softer. When I didn't answer, she pulled out her phone. A few seconds later, it buzzed on the table beside me. Linda, please. Just 5 minutes. I need to talk to you. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I didn't type anything. After a long minute, I stood, walked to the door and cracked it open. Not wide, just enough to look at her without inviting her in. She blinked at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Hi," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't respond. "I know I shouldn't be here," she said quickly. "But I didn't know what else to do. I've been staying at a friend's place, but it's not permanent, and the kids, Mark, I just want to talk." I stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind me. She looked surprised. Maybe she expected warmth. Maybe she thought 3 days was enough for me to soften. She was wrong. "I'm not here to fight," she said. I need to say some things. Things I should have said before." "You had every chance to," I said flatly. "You chose not to." She winced but nodded. "I know. I did. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But I want to be honest now. About everything." I folded my arms. "You should have thought about that before you RSVP'd to that party." Her face flushed with shame. "It wasn't about not loving you." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't insult me with that line. You don't do what you did to someone you love." She looked like she wanted to say more, but I could see it. She knew I was right. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said after a long pause. "But I'm asking, is there a way back? Eventually, even if it takes time. Counseling. Whatever it takes. I'll do anything." I stared at her, and for a moment I almost believed she meant it. Her voice was trembling. Her hands were clenched, like she was holding on to something slipping through her fingers. But I had seen the videos. I had seen the real Linda. The one she didn't show me. The one who didn't hesitate to tear apart our marriage and record herself smiling while doing it. "There's no path back," I said finally. "You ended this." "I was confused," she said desperately. "I got swept up in something stupid. But I'm not that person. I'm not." "You were that person," I said. "You still are." She flinched again. "You didn't just cheat. You built a separate life and kept it secret. You looked me in the eye every day and lied. You filmed yourself laughing in someone else's arms while I was at home cooking dinner for us. That's not a mistake. That's who you are." Tears streamed down her face now, but they didn't move me. I was long past moved. "I miss our family," she whispered. "So do I," I said. "But it's gone. You made sure of that." She looked down. "I know you probably hate me." "I don't hate you," I said, and I meant it. "I just don't believe you anymore. And I can't build a life with someone I can't trust." The silence between us stretched. She finally nodded, slowly, and turned to leave. "I'll stay away," she said as she opened her car door. "Just, please tell the kids I love them." I didn't respond. She drove away. That night, I told the kids she'd come by. I didn't go into detail, just that she wanted to talk, and I said no. Brady nodded, jaw set tight. Molly cried quietly in her room. Over the next few weeks, Linda sent emails. Long ones. Page after page of apologies, self-reflection, therapy appointments, books she was reading about marriage and fidelity. She tried to present herself as someone changed, healed, a woman who had woken up from something toxic. I didn't respond to any of them. She called a few times, left voicemails. I deleted them. Eventually, she stopped coming by. But the damage lingered. The kids asked less about her as time went on. I could tell it hurt them, but they were processing it in their own ways. We had dinner together every night. I made a point to put my phone away to listen more. I started journaling again. Walking. Breathing. I started remembering what peace felt like. It was strange how quickly the house began to feel different. Lighter, like it had shed something toxic. I found myself enjoying the silence. Not the empty kind, but the quiet that lets you think, reflect, heal. One day, I drove past the estate where the party had taken place. I didn't stop, just glanced at the long driveway and kept driving. No anger, no bitterness, just distance, the kind I needed. Some betrayals are loud. Screaming matches, dramatic exits, broken plates. Ours was quieter. But in its quiet, it carved me open. And in that space I began to rebuild.